The champagne flute trembled in my hand as I watched my fiance, Elliot, stand up, tapping his glass for attention. His eyes, those same eyes that had gazed adoringly into mine just this morning, now deliberately avoided me. Something was wrong, again. That familiar coldness spread through my chest, the same chill I'd felt once before when another man had destroyed my world. I was about to be betrayed, reborn into another version of myself I never wanted to become. I have an announcement, Elliot said, his voice carrying across our engagement party. I know this is unexpected, but he faltered, then found his strength when a woman stepped beside him. Sophia, my college roommate, my supposed friend. Sophia and I have reconnected. We were each other's first loves, and sometimes first love is the one that matters most. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My sister Avery's eyes widened, but not with shock, with something closer to fascination. I'm sorry, Mia, Elliot continued, finally looking at me. You deserve someone who loves you completely. That isn't me. The room spun. I watched as if from a distance when he walked over, placed my engagement ring on the table between us, and squeezed my shoulder in what he probably thought was comfort. Sophia lingered by the doorway, fingers twisting nervously, gold bracelet catching the light. The bracelet I'd complimented just last month at brunch. Something inside me shifted. Unlike last time, I didn't cry, I didn't plead, instead I smiled. The betrayal was familiar territory now, and in familiarity, I found strange comfort. I raised my glass, locked eyes with Elliot, and said clearly, "To finding your way back to what matters most." I drank as confused murmurs rippled through the room. No one expected calm acceptance. They wanted tears, drama, something to gossip about tomorrow. Instead, they watched me embrace Sophia briefly, whispering, "Be happy," just loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Only later, alone in my apartment, did I allow my smile to fade. My phone buzzed with a bank notification. Our joint account had been emptied 3 hours before the party. Another buzz, a credit card I didn't recognize had been declined for insufficient funds. The card was in my name. I sank onto the bed, knuckles white around my phone, and pulled up our transaction history. Small withdrawals over months. Carefully planned, perfectly executed. The pattern was unmistakable. This betrayal hadn't been impulsive. It had been meticulously orchestrated while I'd been sampling wedding cakes and writing vows. My phone buzzed again, a social media notification. My finger hovered over the screen, hesitating before tapping it open. Sophia had posted a carousel of photos, Elliot kissing her cheek, their hands intertwined, sunset silhouettes on a beach I recognized from 2 months ago when Elliot had claimed to be at a business conference. The caption read, "Some loves are written in the stars. Sorry it took us so long to follow them. Reunited at last, hashtag first love." The timestamp showed she'd posted them just 15 minutes after the announcement. While I'd been accepting sympathetic hugs and assuring everyone I was fine, they'd been cementing their public narrative. I set my phone down carefully and walked to the bathroom, studying my reflection. I looked different somehow, calmer, more focused. This betrayal wasn't breaking me, it was sharpening me. I'd survived this once before and emerged stronger. This time would be no different. My phone rang, Avery, probably calling to dissect every humiliating detail. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked, voice dripping with what sounded like concern. "That was awful. I can't believe Elliot would do that to you." "I'm fine," I said, surprised to find I meant it. Some relationships aren't meant to last. "But at your engagement party with Sophia? It's unforgivable." I detected something in her voice, excitement, entertainment. I remembered how she'd looked at the party, surprised but not shocked. "Did you know?" I asked quietly. A pause, too long. "Know what?" "About Elliot and Sophia? God, no. How could you think that?" Her denial came too quick, too practiced. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and created a new folder. Forward. The first file I saved was a screenshot of the emptied bank account. The second, Sophia's perfectly timed social media post. My friends had texted, insisting they come over, bring wine, help me through the shock. I replied with grateful declines, promising to call tomorrow. Instead, I spent the night researching financial fraud, documenting dates, taking screenshots of transactions. When my eyes burned from staring at the screen, I finally closed the laptop and lay back on the bed. For the first time since the announcement, I allowed myself to cry. Not from heartbreak, but from a strange mixture of anger and determination. By morning, my tears had dried. As sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting striped shadows across the bedroom we'd shared, I made coffee in the mug Elliot had given me last Christmas. To my forever, the inscription read. I traced the words with my fingertip, then deliberately dropped the mug into the trash. When my phone rang again and Elliot's mother's name flashed on the screen, I answered with a steady voice. Diana, I said warmly. How are you? Oh, Mia, she breathed. I just heard. I'm so sorry. I don't understand what's happening with Elliot. This isn't how we raised him. These things happen, I said, surprising myself with my calm tone. He's making a terrible mistake, she insisted. I've called him 3 times. He won't pick up. I closed my eyes, remembering how she'd welcomed me into their family, how she'd helped me pick out china patterns last month. Another loss to add to the tally. I appreciate your call, I said finally, but perhaps it's best if we give Elliot space to figure out what he wants. After we hung up, I showered, dressed in my most confidence-boosting outfit, and applied makeup with careful precision. I had a plan forming, not for revenge exactly, but for justice, for reclaiming what was mine and more. My phone buzzed with texts from concerned friends. I responded with reassurances that I was handling things well. Some endings are really beginnings, I wrote. Then I silenced notifications and opened my laptop again. The first step would be documenting everything. The second, understanding exactly what I was facing. And the third? The third would depend entirely on what Elliot, Sophia, and apparently my own sister had set in motion. I was no longer the same woman who had been blindsided by betrayal in the past. This time, I wouldn't just survive. I would emerge victorious. And they would never see me coming. 3 days after the engagement party, my sister Avery barged into my apartment without knocking. The sweet scent of her signature perfume, the one Elliot had once commented was intoxicating, filled my living room before she did. I brought comfort food, she announced, holding up a paper bag from my favorite bakery. And trashy magazines. We're going to get through this together. I accepted her hug, noticing how her eyes darted around the apartment, perhaps surprised to find it clean rather than strewn with tissues and empty ice cream containers. No signs of the breakdown she clearly expected to witness. You look good, she said, sounding disappointed. I thought you'd be a mess. Why would I be? I arranged my face into neutral curiosity. Avery plopped onto my couch, already scrolling through her phone. Because your fiancé humiliated you in front of everyone we know? Because he's already posting photos with Sophia like you never existed? She turned her phone screen toward me. A fresh post, Elliot and Sophia, at sunset on the balcony of what was supposed to be our honeymoon resort. The caption read, New beginnings with my forever love. 57 likes, including one from Avery herself. You liked it? I asked quietly. Her fingers fumbled, nearly dropping the phone. It was an accident. You know how Instagram is? My thumb just hit. It's fine, I said, taking the bakery bag and heading to the kitchen. Why wouldn't you support their happiness? In the kitchen, I busied myself with plates and napkins, breathing deeply to maintain my composure. Through the doorway, I watched Avery rapidly texting, her thumbs flying across the screen. A notification vibrated my own phone on the counter. I glanced down to see a message from an unknown number. She's phishing. Be careful what you reveal. I slipped my phone into my pocket as Avery appeared in the doorway. So, she leaned against the doorframe. Have you talked to Elliot since... No, I replied simply, arranging croissants on a plate. He feels terrible, you know. She twisted a strand of hair around her finger, her tell when lying. He never meant to hurt you. Is that what he told you? Her eyes widened slightly. We haven't really talked. I just assume... Interesting that you'd know how he feels without talking to him. I smiled, sliding past her with the plate of pastries. Coffee? Throughout the afternoon, Avery's phone buzzed constantly, each time she angled the screen away from me. When she excused herself to use the bathroom, I noticed she took her phone with her. The bathroom door had barely closed when I heard her whispering. Quietly, I pressed my ear to the door. Not crying at all, I heard her say. I know, it's weird. No, I haven't seen any papers or messages. She seems totally fine. It's creeping me out. My skin prickled with betrayal, yet confirmation was oddly satisfying. I tiptoed back to the couch before she emerged, her cheeks slightly flushed. Everything okay? I asked innocently. Fine, just my boss checking in. Another lie. After Avery finally left, promising to check on me again tomorrow, I allowed myself a moment of pure, white-hot rage. My own sister. I had suspected her involvement, but hearing her report back to them, likely Elliot or Sophia, felt like a physical blow. I poured myself a glass of wine, then opened my laptop and created a new document titled Avery in my forward folder. I documented our conversation, her call in the bathroom, her reactions. Then I added what I already knew, how she had accidentally introduced Elliot to Sophia at a charity event last year, how she had encouraged me to work late when Elliot suggested dinner plans with old friends. My phone pinged with another text from the unknown number. We need to meet. Cafe on Park St. 9 a.m. tomorrow. Table by the window. Who are you? I texted back. Someone who knows what it's like to be discarded by Elliot Chambers. Sleep evaded me that night. At 3 a.m., I found myself sitting at my desk staring at the spreadsheet of financial transactions I'd been compiling. Small withdrawals from our joint account dating back 6 months, initially easy to overlook. A pattern emerged. Each withdrawal occurred on days I worked late. Days Avery had encouraged me to show that boss who's indispensable. My boss, Marcus Chambers, Elliot's uncle. The connection crystallized in my mind just as dawn broke. I showered, dressed in a crisp white blouse and pencil skirt, and headed to the office earlier than usual. The elevator smelled of artificial lemon cleaner and someone's too strong cologne as it carried me to the executive floor where both Marcus and I had offices. Marcus's assistant, Jennifer, looked up in surprise as I walked past her desk. Mia, we didn't expect you back so soon after, well, you know. Her eyes telegraphed pity. Just picking up a few things, I smiled. Is Marcus in yet? Not until 9. Can I help with anything? No need. I continued to my office, closing the door behind me. Once inside, I moved quickly. I inserted a small USB drive into my computer and began copying key files, projects I'd spearheaded that had mysteriously been reassigned, client communications that had been rerouted, presentation decks I'd created that now bore other names. The progress bar inched forward as the minutes ticked by. A knock at my door startled me. I ejected the drive and slipped it into my pocket just as Marcus entered without waiting for a response. The scent of expensive aftershave announced his presence before his voice did. Mia, Jennifer said you were here. His tone was professionally sympathetic, but his eyes were calculating. I'm surprised. I thought you might take some personal time. I'm fine, I said, echoing the words I'd been repeating for days. Work helps. About that. Marcus settled into the chair across from my desk, adjustment of his cuffs. I've been meaning to discuss your role here. My stomach tightened. My role? In light of recent personal developments, we think it might be best to restructure your position. Because of my broken engagement, I kept my voice even, professional. These situations can be emotionally destabilizing. The team needs consistent leadership on the Westridge account. He wouldn't meet my eyes. We're moving you to internal operations temporarily. Jennifer will help transition your clients today. Demotion. Effective immediately, no warning, no performance issues cited, just conveniently timed after Elliot left me. I see. I maintained my composure even as rage heated my blood. And who will be taking over the Westridge account? Kyle Mitchell. Elliot's fraternity brother, of course. I understand. I folded my hands on the desk. Is there anything else? Marcus looked momentarily thrown by my calm acceptance. He'd expected tears, protests, something that would justify his decision. Instead, I smiled politely, professionally. No, that's all. Take the rest of the day to get settled. Jennifer will email your new responsibilities. After he left, I sat perfectly still for 5 full minutes, controlling my breathing. Then I methodically gathered personal items from my desk, carefully avoiding the framed photo of Elliot and me I'd left prominently displayed. Let them think I was too distraught to take it. Instead of leaving, I went to the small conference room adjacent to my office and closed the door. From my purse, I extracted a second USB drive. This one I plugged into the conference room computer, copying email archives that would prove the timing of project reassignments and client transfers. The download was at 87% when my phone buzzed. An email from HR outlining my transitional role. Copied on the email, Marcus, Kyle, and Elliot. Despite no longer working for the company, my ex-fiancé was being kept informed of my professional demotion. I completed the download and returned to my office just as Jennifer arrived with a sympathetic expression and a box for my belongings. "I'm so sorry, Mia," she whispered. "This isn't right." I squeezed her hand gratefully. "It's just business, right?" "Between us," she lowered her voice further. "Kyle's been in Marcus's office 3 times this week, and Elliot called yesterday." I nodded, filing away this information. "Thanks for telling me." As I packed my photos and desk plants, I left my company laptop conspicuously open to my personal email, where I'd accidentally left a draft of a resignation letter visible. Let them think I was planning to leave anyway. Let them feel secure. By noon, I was escorted to a windowless office half the size of my previous one, 3 floors down. My new team, consisting of 2 junior associates who looked terrified to have me, avoided eye contact as they explained the mindless data entry projects I'd be overseeing. At 5 o'clock, I shut down the unfamiliar computer and gathered my purse. Instead of heading to the elevator, I took the stairs up to the executive floor. Most offices were dark now, but light still spilled from Marcus's corner office. I watched through the glass partition as he laughed on the phone, feet propped on his desk. I snapped a quick photo with my phone, then made my way to the elevator. Tomorrow would bring the mysterious cafe meeting, and tonight I had more research to do. The pieces were beginning to align. Elliot, Sophia, Avery, Marcus, all connected in ways I was only starting to uncover. In the lobby, I passed Kyle heading in, presumably for a late meeting with Marcus. He startled upon seeing me, guilt flashing across his face before he composed himself. "Mia, hey, I heard you were back today. How are you holding up?" "Perfectly fine, Kyle," I replied, noting how he shifted uncomfortably. "Congratulations on the Westridge account." "Thanks, He hesitated. "Look, it wasn't my idea. Marcus approached me and—" "No explanation necessary," I cut him off with a smile. "I'm sure you'll do a fantastic job with all the groundwork I've laid." I walked away before he could respond, my heels clicking purposefully across the marble floor. Outside, the evening air carried the scent of approaching rain, fresh and cleansing. I inhaled deeply, feeling strangely liberated, despite everything I'd lost in the past week. My phone vibrated with a text from the unknown number. "Still meeting tomorrow? Critical information about Marcus." "I'll be there," I replied. On the train ride home, I avoided the social media apps where Elliot and Sophia's new relationship was undoubtedly being flaunted. Instead, I researched corporate whistleblower protections and intellectual property laws. My stop approached, and I gathered my belongings, noticing a familiar figure on the platform as the doors opened. Sophia stood waiting for the train, her expression falling when she saw me. For a brief moment, genuine shame crossed her face before she recovered with a tight smile. "Mia," she said, voice pitched higher than normal. I didn't know you took this train." "Every day for 3 years," I replied calmly. "Elliot never mentioned it?" She flushed. We wanted to talk to you properly to explain." "No explanation necessary." I stepped past her onto the platform. "I hope he makes you as happy as he promised to make me." I walked away, heart hammering despite my outward composure. Behind me, I heard her call my name once more, but I didn't turn back. Let her wonder what I was thinking. Let her worry about what I might do. At home, I changed into comfortable clothes and spread my gathered evidence across the kitchen table. Financial records, copied files, Photos from social media with dates that contradicted stories I'd been told. The puzzle was taking shape. My phone rang, Elliot's mother again. I hesitated, then answered. Diana, how are you? I kept my voice warm, genuine. Mia, dear. She sounded tired. I wanted to check on you and to apologize for my son's behavior. You have nothing to apologize for. I raised him better than this. Her voice cracked slightly. The way he's handled everything, it's disgraceful. Something in her tone made me pause. Everything. A beat of silence. The engagement, of course, breaking it off the way he did. Of course, I agreed, but my instincts hummed. There was something else, something she wasn't saying. Are you free for lunch next week? She asked suddenly. There are things, well, I'd rather discuss in person. I'd like that, I said truthfully. Diana had always been kind to me, had welcomed me when Elliot first brought me home. After we hung up, I added another document to my growing collection. Something bigger was happening, something beyond a simple affair and broken engagement. Tomorrow's mysterious meeting might provide answers, but until then, I would continue gathering information, building my case piece by piece. I closed my laptop and stood by the window, watching nightfall blanket the city. In the dark glass, my reflection looked different, determined, focused. The woman who had once cried for weeks over betrayal was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who understood that the best revenge wasn't loud or destructive. It was methodical, patient, inevitable. And it was just beginning. The cafe on Park Street hummed with morning activity, the bitter aroma of espresso mingling with sweet pastry scents. I arrived 10 minutes early, selecting the window table as instructed. The cool glass beside me fogged with my breath as I watched pedestrians hurry past, wondering which might be my mysterious contact. At precisely 9, a sleek woman in her 40s approached my table. She wore no makeup, her hair pulled back severely, but her clothes were impeccably tailored and her watch worth more than my monthly rent. Mia Winters? She asked, voice low and controlled. I nodded, and she took the seat across from me without offering her name. I apologize for the cryptic messages, she said, ordering black coffee when the server approached. I needed to ensure this meeting wouldn't get back to Elliot or Marcus. And you are? Vanessa Reed, before you, before Sophia, before the others, I was Elliot's wife. The shock must have registered on my face because she smiled thinly. Wife? Elliot told me he'd never been married. Of course he did. Vanessa's laugh lacked humor. I'm the inconvenient chapter he erases from his story. We were married for 3 years. My mind raced, recalibrating everything I thought I knew about the man I'd nearly married. When? We divorced 4 years ago, right before he joined his uncle's firm. She pulled out her phone, showing me a photo of a younger Elliot in a tuxedo, her in a wedding gown. I couldn't risk sending this electronically. Why are you telling me this now? Because yesterday, I received this. She slid a legal document across the table. Notice of inquiry about a loan I supposedly co-signed 3 months ago for $85,000. I scanned the document, my heart sinking. Let me guess, you didn't sign anything. No, but apparently someone with access to my personal information did. Her gaze was steady. The same thing happened during our divorce. Mysterious credit accounts, loans I never approved. It took 2 years to clear my credit. I pulled out my phone, showing her my banking app. Joint account emptied 3 days ago. And I'm discovering credit cards I never applied for. Vanessa nodded grimly. It's his pattern, and not just with finances. For the next hour, Vanessa outlined a disturbingly familiar playbook. Elliot's whirlwind romance tactics, the strategic isolation from friends, the gradual financial entanglements, and finally, the discard. Always for a first love or the one who got away. There have been at least 3 women between us, she said, stirring her second coffee. Always the same story, and always with Marcus cleaning up afterward. Marcus is involved? Marcus is the architect, Vanessa corrected. Elliot's just the charming face of the operation. As she spoke, my phone buzzed with a notification. My credit monitoring app reported a dramatic drop in my score, over 150 points overnight. I showed Vanessa the screen, my fingers trembling slightly. Right on schedule, she murmured. Check for new accounts. Sure enough, the app showed 3 credit accounts opened in my name in the past week, all maxed out. My stomach twisted into a cold knot as I calculated the damage. Nearly $50,000 in fraudulent debt. This is financial abuse, I whispered, the terminology I'd researched suddenly personal and raw. And fraud, Vanessa added. But proving it is nearly impossible without documentation from before the accounts were opened. They've perfected their system. What happened with your case? I settled. Her mouth tightened with old regret. I was emotionally exhausted, financially drained from legal fees. They count on that, wearing you down until you accept whatever scraps they offer. I thought of the USB drives tucked safely in my apartment, the screenshots, the detailed timeline I'd been building. I've been gathering evidence. Something like approval flashed in Vanessa's eyes. Good, you'll need it. She handed me her business card. I'm an estate attorney now. Not the right specialty for this, but I have contacts who can help. As we prepared to leave, Vanessa gripped my arm. One more thing. Watch your sister. My surprise must have been evident because she nodded knowingly. Let me guess. She introduced you to Elliot? Encouraged the relationship? Always seemed to know his schedule better than you did? A chill ran through me. How did you know? Because Sophia did the same for me. They find women with trusted sisters or best friends, then recruit them first. The betrayal is part of the plan. It isolates you further. I left the cafe with my mind reeling, the sidewalk seeming to tilt beneath my feet. The cool autumn air did little to clear my head, as connections formed between pieces I hadn't realized were part of the same puzzle. My phone rang as I reached the subway entrance. Unknown number. Ms. Winters? A professional, unfamiliar voice. This is Trevor Daniels from First National Bank's fraud department. We've noticed some unusual activity on your accounts. Do you have a moment to verify some transactions? For the next 15 minutes, I stood in the shadow of the subway entrance as the banker listed transaction after transaction I'd never made. Cash advances, overseas transfers, application attempts for new lines of credit, all within the past 72 hours. We've frozen your accounts temporarily, he explained. But I'm afraid your credit score has already been affected. You'll need to come to the branch with identification to begin the fraud claims process. The banker's voice held the practiced sympathy of someone who delivered this news regularly, but his tone changed when I asked methodical questions about documentation requirements instead of panicking. You seem very composed, Ms. Winters, he observed. I've been expecting this, I replied simply. At the bank, I provided my ID and signature, initiating what the fraud specialist warned would be a lengthy process to restore my financial identity. When she handed me the standard victim statement form, I noticed her surprise when I pulled out a thumb drive. I've documented unusual account activity dating back 6 months, I explained, connecting the drive to her computer. Including access logs showing logins from devices I don't own. At times, I was verifiably elsewhere. The specialist blinked at the meticulously organized spreadsheets and screenshots. This is unusually thorough. I've also filed police reports documenting that my personal documents were accessed without permission during a recent personal situation. I didn't mention that I'd filed those reports just yesterday, anticipating exactly this scenario after my conversation with Vanessa. The specialist made copies of everything, her professional detachment warming slightly to something like respect. We don't often see this level of preparation, she admitted. It should expedite your case significantly. By the time I left the bank, the autumn day had warmed, sunlight filtering through yellow leaves. I checked my watch. Nearly 3 hours spent sorting through financial wreckage. My phone showed 6 missed calls. 2 from Avery, 1 from my mother, 3 from unknown numbers. I was about to silence it again when it rang. Diana Chambers, Elliot's mother. I answered, finding my voice steadier than I expected. Diana, hello? Mia, dear. Her voice was tight with restraint. Are you available for that lunch today instead of next week? Something's come up that I think you should know about. We arranged to meet at a small restaurant near her home in an hour. As I navigated to the wealthier side of town, my phone continued to buzz with messages from Avery. Have you checked your credit score? Elliot's worried about you. Mom says you're not answering calls. We need to talk about your finances ASAP. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental. They knew the fraudulent accounts had been discovered. I silenced the phone without responding and turned my attention to the upcoming meeting with Diana. The restaurant was quietly elegant, all muted colors and soft piano music. Diana was already seated when I arrived, her normally perfect appearance slightly disheveled, eyes red-rimmed behind designer glasses. "Thank you for coming," she said, reaching for my hand across the table. Her fingers were cold despite the warm day. "I've been struggling with what to do." "About?" I kept my voice neutral. Diana glanced around, then lowered her voice. "I found something in Marcus's study last night. Something concerning you." She withdrew a folder from her handbag and slid it across the table. Inside were printouts of loan applications, all in my name, all with forged signatures that nevertheless looked convincingly like my handwriting. "These were on his desk," Diana whispered, "along with others, different names, different dates, going back years." I examined the documents carefully, noting familiar patterns, the same credit companies, similar loan amounts, identical co-signers, including Elliot's name on several. "You know what this means," I said quietly. Diana nodded, tears welling. "My son and my husband's brother. I suspected Marcus was involved in something unethical, but I never imagined Elliot." Her voice broke. "What they're doing to you. It's criminal. How did you get these?" "Marcus has been careless lately, overconfident." She dabbed at her eyes. "After what happened at your engagement party, I started paying attention. The way they talked about you afterward, it wasn't right." "They?" I prompted. "Marcus, Elliot, sometimes your sister was there too." Diana's admission twisted in my chest like a knife. "They'd stopped talking when I entered the room, but I heard enough." "And Sophia." Diana's expression hardened. "Sophia has been in Marcus's orbit for years, long before Elliot brought you home." I digested this information, another piece fitting into the expanding puzzle. "Why are you showing me this, Diana?" "Because it's wrong," she said simply, "and because you're not the first. There was a woman before you, Vanessa, and I did nothing then. I've regretted it for years." I carefully photographed each document while Diana watched, her hands twisting a napkin into shreds. "They'll know these are missing," I said. "Not immediately. Marcus is in Chicago until tomorrow. I'll return them tonight." She hesitated. "There's something else, a key." From her purse, she extracted a small silver key attached to a blank tag. "This opens Marcus's private office downtown, not his firm office, a separate space where he keeps records. 1420 Lakeview Avenue, Suite 302. I accepted the key, its weight disproportionate to its size. Why not take this information to the authorities yourself?" Diana's smile held no humor. "My name is on too many documents. I've benefited from Marcus's firms for decades without asking questions. My hands aren't clean." She checked her watch. "I should go. Marcus calls every day at 3 to check in." As she gathered her belongings, Diana paused. "Be careful, Mia. What you're up against, it's bigger than just Elliot." After she left, I remained at the table, mind racing as I organized this new information. I ordered coffee and opened my laptop, searching property records for the Lakeview Avenue address. The building owner was listed as Chambers Holdings LLC, a company I'd never heard Elliot mention. My phone buzzed again with Avery's name. This time I answered. "Where have you been?" she demanded, anxiety sharpening her voice. "I've been calling all day." "I had a banking issue to resolve," I replied calmly. "Why? What's wrong?" "Banking?" She stumbled over the word. "So, you know about the accounts?" "What accounts would those be, Avery?" I kept my tone innocent, hearing her breath catch. The fraud. Elliot called me. Someone's stolen your identity or something? He's really worried." The performance was almost convincing. If I hadn't seen my sister's name on paperwork Diana had shown me, If I hadn't heard her reporting back from my bathroom, I might have believed her concern. How thoughtful of Elliot to worry about my finances after emptying our joint account, I remarked. And how interesting that he called you about my stolen identity before I even knew about it myself. What? No, I have to go, Avery. The fraud department needs more documentation. I hung up before she could respond, my hands surprisingly steady despite the anger coursing through me. Outside the restaurant, I hailed a cab to 1420 Lakeview Avenue. The key Diana had given me secure in my pocket. The building was unremarkable, a mid-rise office complex with mirrored windows reflecting the late afternoon sun. The directory in the lobby listed Suite 302 as CH Private Consulting. No security guard monitored the entrance, just a keycard panel that fortunately didn't control access to the elevators. On the third floor, I found Suite 302 at the end of a quiet hallway. The frosted glass door revealed no movement inside. I slipped the key into the lock, half expecting it not to work, but it turned smoothly. The door opened into a small, immaculate reception area, currently unoccupied. Moving quickly, I navigated past the reception desk to the inner office. The door was unlocked. Inside, the space was meticulously organized. Filing cabinets along one wall, a large desk with a closed laptop, and a small conference table. The air smelled stale, as if the room was infrequently used. I began with the filing cabinets, finding them unlocked. Inside were folders organized alphabetically by name, dozens of them. I recognized some. Previous employees from Marcus's firm who had left suddenly, a few social connections who had mysteriously fallen out with the Chambers family. And there under R was a thick file labeled Read Vanessa. I photographed the contents page by page. Loan applications, credit reports, bank statements, even private investigator reports on Vanessa's daily activities. The systematic invasion of her life was documented in clinical detail. My own file was there too. Started just weeks after I began dating Elliot. The earliest documents shocked me most. A background check run before I'd even met Marcus. Credit reports from when Elliot and I had just started dating, surveillance photos of me leaving my old apartment. They had been targeting me from the beginning. I was photographing the last pages when a sound from the outer office froze me in place. The reception door opening. Keys jingled, footsteps approached. Heart pounding, I quickly returned the files to their places and searched desperately for an exit. The office had no other door, just a window overlooking an alley 3 stories below. The footsteps paused in the reception area, then continued toward the office. I slipped behind the door just as it swung open, praying the person wouldn't need to close it again. Through the crack between door and frame, I saw a middle-aged man in a security uniform glance around the office, then walk to the desk and place an envelope on it. Just a mail delivery. He surveyed the room once more, frowning slightly as if sensing something amiss, then turned and left. I heard the reception door close and lock behind him. I waited 5 full minutes, counting my heartbeats, before emerging from my hiding place. The close call left my hands trembling as I hurriedly photographed several more documents, including a list of names and dates that appeared to be previous targets. As I prepared to leave, my eye caught a notebook in the desk drawer I'd opened. Leather-bound, expensive. Inside was handwritten documentation of what could only be described as the playbook, stages of each scheme, notes on selecting targets, professional women, limited family connections, previous relationship trauma, and even script suggestions for key conversations. I photographed every page, nausea building as I read clinical assessments of how to manipulate women's emotions, how to isolate them from support systems, how to maximize financial gain before the separation phase. My own name appeared in recent entries with notes evaluating my reactions to various pressure tests over the past year. The final pages detailed extraction protocols, how to end relationships while minimizing legal exposure and maximizing asset retention. My engagement party humiliation had been planned months in advance, with roles assigned to each player, including Avery. When I finished documenting everything, I carefully returned the notebook exactly as I'd found it and did a final check to ensure nothing appeared disturbed. Then I slipped out, locking the door behind me. My heart didn't slow until I was blocks away, seated on a park bench, my hands still shaking as I reviewed the photographic evidence on my phone. The scale of the operation stunned me. This wasn't just a man leaving his fiancée for an ex-girlfriend. This was organized, systematic fraud targeting multiple women over years. And I had been meticulously selected, groomed, and now discarded according to their established protocol. I was still processing this revelation when my phone rang again. Another unknown number. This time, it was a man identifying himself as Elliot's attorney. Ms. Winters, I'm calling regarding the dissolution of your engagement to Mr. Chambers. He would like to address any outstanding financial matters expeditiously. I'm sure he would, I replied, surprising myself with my steady voice. Mr. Chambers has prepared a settlement offer that he believes is quite generous considering the brevity of your relationship. Brevity? 2 years of my life reduced to a dismissive term. His offer includes 3 months' rent for your current apartment and assuming responsibility for the canceled wedding vendor deposits in exchange for your signature on a confidentiality agreement regarding the nature of your relationship and its conclusion. I almost laughed at the audacity. And the fraudulent accounts opened in my name? The empty joint account, my compromised credit score? A pause. I'm not aware of any such matters. This offer addresses only the dissolution of the engagement. I'll need to review any documents with my own attorney, I said, thinking of Vanessa's business card in my wallet. Of course. His tone cooled noticeably. I should mention that Mr. Chambers is prepared to be generous now, but his patience isn't unlimited. Legal disputes can become protracted and expensive. The threat was thinly veiled. They expected me to be financially devastated, unable to afford legal representation. They didn't know I had evidence not just of my own case, but of a pattern spanning years. Email me the offer, I said calmly. I'll be in touch. Night had fallen by the time I returned to my apartment. The day's discoveries swirled in my mind as I methodically transferred photos from my phone to my laptop, organizing them into folders, creating backups. My fingers ached from typing as I documented everything while it was fresh in my memory. A text arrived from Diana. Documents returned. Be careful with what you know. I glanced out my window at the city lights, wondering how many other women had stood where I was now. Betrayed, frightened, alone. Except I wasn't alone. I had evidence. I had Vanessa. I had Diana, however complicated her involvement might be. And I had something Elliot and Marcus clearly hadn't anticipated. I wasn't broken by their betrayal. Instead, I was methodically building a case that could bring down their entire operation. As I prepared for bed, I received one final text for the day from Vanessa. Met with my contact at the Financial Crimes Division. They're interested in your evidence. Ready when you are. I smiled for the first time that day. A genuine smile that held the promise of justice. They thought they were watching me unravel. They had no idea I was actually pulling at the threads that would unravel them instead. The next morning dawned with deceptive calm. Sunlight streamed through my blinds, painting warm stripes across my bedspread as I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Avery, 2 from my mother, and 1 from an unknown number that had left no message. I ignored them all and opened my email instead. There it was. Elliot's settlement offer, clinical and insulting in its brevity. The attached PDF outlined terms that would require me to surrender any claims against him in exchange for what amounted to pocket change for someone of his wealth. The confidentiality clause was particularly extensive, prohibiting me from discussing not only our relationship, but any business practices or personal associations I had become aware of during our time together. They were trying to silence me legally before I could connect with other victims. I forwarded the document to Vanessa with a brief note. As discussed, they're moving quickly. Her response came within minutes. Typical playbook, don't sign anything. Meeting set with investigator tomorrow, 10 a.m. Satisfied with the plan taking shape, I dressed and prepared to face another day in my diminished role at work. I had just finished applying lipstick when my doorbell rang, unexpected at 7:30 a.m. Through the peephole, I saw a delivery person holding a large box. Cautiously, I opened the door. Delivery for Mia Winters, the young man said, holding out an electronic signature pad. I didn't order anything. He shrugged. Just delivering, ma'am. Says it's from an E-Chambers. My heart stuttered at the name, but I kept my expression neutral as I signed and accepted the heavy package. Once alone, I carefully opened it, half expecting something unpleasant. Instead, I found my personal items from our shared storage unit. Photo albums, heirloom jewelry from my grandmother, childhood mementos. A note on elegant stationery sat atop the contents. I thought you might want these back. The rest has been cleared out to make space. E? Cleared out? I grabbed my phone and called the storage facility. After verifying my identity, the manager confirmed what I already suspected. Yes, Ms. Winters, the unit was accessed 2 weeks ago by the co-registrant. He removed most items and surrendered the lease. We've already reassigned the unit. 2 weeks ago? I repeated, my voice hollow. Before our engagement party? Yes, ma'am. October 14th. I thanked him mechanically and ended the call, mind racing. Elliot had emptied our storage unit while helping me select floral arrangements for our wedding. The deliberate timing made the betrayal even more calculated. I called the building superintendent next. Hi, Joe. It's Mia from 412. Could you check if anyone accessed my storage cage in the basement recently? His hesitation told me everything before he spoke. Actually, yes. Your sister came by last week with a gentleman. Said you asked them to grab some things while you were at work. My sister, with Elliot, taking my possessions while I was rebuilding my life. When exactly? Let me check the security log. Keyboard clicks sounded in the background. Tuesday, around 2 p.m. The day after my bank accounts were frozen. While I was meeting with fraud specialists, they were looting what remained of my personal history. Thanks, Joe. I kept my voice steady. And if they come back? Want me to deny access? Please, and let me know immediately. I surveyed the box Elliot had returned, the items carefully curated to appear thoughtful while being ultimately meaningless. The truly valuable pieces, my grandmother's first edition books, my father's record collection, the antique desk I'd inherited, were conspicuously absent. My phone buzzed with a text from Avery. Stopping by your place after work. Need to talk. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I grabbed my laptop and headed to the coffee shop across the street from my apartment building. I couldn't risk Avery showing up unannounced while I was still processing this latest violation. The coffee shop bustled with morning commuters, the air rich with the scent of freshly ground beans and warm pastries. I found a corner table and opened my laptop, creating a new document titled Storage Unit Inventory. Methodically, I listed everything that had been in that unit, including photographs where I had them and estimated values. My phone rang. Vanessa. I was about to email you, I said quietly. They emptied my storage unit. Family heirlooms, valuable books, everything with any worth. Document everything, she advised, voice tight with familiar anger. Values, dates of acquisition, any paperwork you have. They're accelerating because you're not following their usual victim pattern. The usual pattern? Panic, withdrawal, quiet acceptance of whatever they offer. Vanessa's voice held grudging approval. You're making them nervous. Good. I've spoken with my contact again. The financial crimes investigator wants to see everything you've gathered, not just about your case, but the others too. How much have you documented? I glanced at my laptop screen, at the dozens of meticulously organized folders. Everything. Financial records, photos of Marcus's files, timeline of events, connections between cases. Perfect. She named a detective and gave me an address. Tomorrow morning, bring everything. As I ended the call, I noticed a man at a nearby table quickly look away. Something about his posture seemed familiar, though I couldn't place him. I casually gathered my belongings and relocated to a table with my back to the wall where I could observe the entire coffee shop. The man left shortly after, speaking briefly on his phone before exiting. My paranoia was probably unwarranted, but I decided to work from the public library instead, somewhere with security cameras and staff. At the office, my new windowless space felt even more claustrophobic than before. My junior team members avoided eye contact as they delivered mundane tasks clearly designed to bore me into resignation. I accepted each assignment with a pleasant smile, completing them with exaggerated thoroughness while using my personal phone to continue documenting the stolen items. At lunch, I bypassed the company cafeteria and walked to a small diner several blocks away. I had just placed my order when Elliot's attorney entered, spotting me immediately. Not a coincidence. "Ms. Winters," he said smoothly, approaching my table. "Howard Geller, we spoke yesterday." I remember. I didn't invite him to sit, but he did anyway. I was hoping to discuss Mr. Chambers' offer in person. The timeline for acceptance is rather tight. Is it? I sipped my water, meeting his gaze steadily. Mr. Chambers is eager to resolve this matter before the end of the week. His tone suggested this was reasonable rather than absurdly rushed. That's not possible. I'm reviewing the terms with my attorney. Something flickered across Geller's face. Surprise? Concern? Before his professional mask returned. "I wasn't aware you had retained counsel." "There's quite a bit you're not aware of, Mr. Geller." The waitress delivered my sandwich, and I thanked her warmly, turning my attention to the food, as if the attorney weren't still sitting across from me. "Ms. Winters," his voice lowered, "let me speak frankly. You're in a difficult position, financially and otherwise. Mr. Chambers is willing to be generous now, but that generosity has limits." I looked up, meeting his gaze. "Is that a threat?" "A reality. Legal battles are expensive and emotionally draining. Someone in your position, with recently damaged credit and reduced professional standing, might find it challenging to sustain such a fight." I dabbed my lips with a napkin, buying time to control my rising anger. "Mr. Geller, let me be equally frank. I know exactly what position I'm in. Does Mr. Chambers know what position he's in?" The attorney's confidence wavered visibly. "I'm not sure I follow." "That's between me and Mr. Chambers." I smiled pleasantly. "Now, if you'll excuse me, my lunch break is limited and I have several calls to make." After a moment's hesitation, Geller stood. "Consider the offer carefully, Ms. Winters. It expires Friday." I watched him leave, my appetite diminished, but my resolve strengthened. They were monitoring me closely enough to know where I took lunch. The knowledge should have frightened me, but instead it confirmed I was making them nervous. Back at the office, I discovered my computer access had been further restricted. Most databases now required special authorization, effectively preventing me from doing even the minimal work assigned. A message from IT claimed security protocol updates, but the timing was too convenient. I was composing a detailed email requesting clarification when Marcus appeared in my doorway, his custom cologne announcing his presence before I looked up. "Mia," he said, voice artificially warm. "How are you settling in?" "Quite well, thank you." I gestured to my screen, though there seems to be some confusion about my access levels. "Ah, yes." He entered without invitation, closing the door behind him. The small office immediately felt suffocating. "Standard procedure during transitions. Nothing personal." "Of course not." Marcus studied me, clearly searching for signs of distress or defeat. Finding none, he shifted tactics. "Elliot mentioned you haven't responded to the settlement proposal." So there it was, the real reason for his visit. "I'm reviewing it with my attorney." His eyebrows rose slightly. "I wasn't aware you had legal representation." "There's quite a bit you're not aware of, Marcus." The echo of my words to Geller wasn't lost on him. His expression hardened, the pretense of concern evaporating. "I've always liked you, Mia. You're intelligent, poised, qualities I admire, which is why I'm going to give you some advice." He leaned forward, voice dropping. "Accept Elliot's offer, sign the papers, move on with your life." Is that what Vanessa Reed did? The name hit him like a physical blow. He recovered quickly, but not before I saw the flash of alarm in his eyes. "I don't know who that is." "That's odd, considering the extensive file you keep on her in your Lakeview office." All pretense vanished from his expression. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but I strongly advise you to reconsider. Some paths, once taken, can't be reversed. Like identity theft, fraud, financial abuse." I kept my voice low but firm. Those paths seem particularly difficult to reverse. Marcus stood abruptly. I came here out of respect for your past relationship with my nephew. That respect has limits. As does my patience for being victimized. He paused at the door. Think carefully about your next move, Mia. You're playing a game you don't understand. I understand perfectly. That's what worries you, isn't it? After he left, I sat perfectly still, processing the confrontation. My hands shook slightly, but not from fear, from the rush of standing my ground. They were escalating because I wasn't following the script. I wasn't cowering or accepting their terms. I worked through the afternoon, completing meaningless tasks while mentally preparing for my meeting with the financial crimes investigator. At 5 o'clock precisely, and gathered my belongings and headed for the elevator. Kyle Mitchell, now handling my former clients, stepped in just as the doors were closing. His expression registered surprise, then discomfort. Mia, hey, how's everything? Illuminating, I replied coolly. He shifted his weight nervously. Look, about the Westridge account, it wasn't my idea. Marcus insisted. I'm sure he did. You have to understand, I couldn't say no. My position is precarious, I finished for him. Everyone's is at Chambers and Associates, isn't it? One mistake, one refusal, and suddenly your access is restricted, your clients reassigned, your reputation questioned. Kyle paled slightly. What are you saying? I'm not saying anything, just making an observation. The elevator reached the lobby and I stepped out, leaving Kyle staring after me with dawning comprehension. A seed planted. Not everyone in Marcus's orbit was a willing participant in his schemes. Some were simply trapped in the same web they'd helped spin for others. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the plaza. I had taken only a few steps when I spotted Avery waiting by the fountain, clearly there to intercept me. I considered turning around, but she had already seen me. Mia! She hurried over, designer handbag swinging. I've been calling you all day. Why aren't you answering? I've been busy, I replied, continuing to walk toward the subway. Working, dealing with fraud claims. The usual post-betrayal activities. She flinched at the word betrayal, but quickly recovered. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Elliot says there's a settlement offer, something that would help with your finances. How thoughtful of Elliot to discuss my finances with my sister. Again. Avery caught my arm, forcing me to stop. Why are you being like this? He's trying to help you. Help me? I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. By emptying our joint account? By taking my family heirlooms from storage? By destroying my credit score with fraudulent loans? That wasn't him. Someone stole your identity. Stop lying, Avery. I pulled my arm from her grasp. I know everything. The files, the previous women, your role in all of it. Her expression flickered between shock, guilt, and something else, fear. What files? What are you talking about? Ask Elliot. Or better yet, ask Marcus. Ask them about Vanessa Reed. Ask them why the Financial Crimes Division is interested in their business practices. The color drained from Avery's face. You've talked to the police? Huh. I have a meeting with them tomorrow. It wasn't technically a lie. Is that why you're really here? To see what I know? To report back to Elliot like you've been doing all along? It's not what you think, she whispered. Then what is it? Because from where I'm standing, my own sister helped orchestrate my financial and emotional destruction. Tears filled her eyes. You don't understand. I didn't have a choice. We always have choices, Avery. No, you don't understand. Her voice dropped to a barely audible whisper. They have things on me, too. Things that could ruin me. I studied her face, searching for truth amid the manipulation I'd grown accustomed to. There was genuine fear in her eyes. What things? She glanced around nervously. Not here. I can't. Her phone buzzed and she jumped. Checking the screen, her expression tightened. I have to go. Avery. Just take the settlement, Mia, please, for everyone's sake. She hurried away, leaving me with more questions than answers. I watched her disappear into the crowd, wondering what hold Marcus had over my sister. Was she another victim? Or still playing a role in their scheme? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Storage locker at Central Station number 247, code 5813. Go tonight, bring USB drive. Diana, it had to be, only she would know what I needed. I changed direction, heading for Central Station instead of home. The locker area was in the basement level, poorly lit and smelling of damp concrete. I found number 247 in a back corner, partially hidden behind a support column. The code worked. Inside the locker was a manila envelope and a handwritten note. Security footage from Marcus's building and financial records you won't find elsewhere. Be careful. I slipped the envelope into my bag and relocked the locker, constantly checking over my shoulder. The station was busy with evening commuters, providing anonymity, but also making it impossible to know if I was being watched. Back in my apartment, I secured the door with both deadbolts before examining the envelope's contents. A USB drive and printouts of banking transactions, offshore accounts, transfers between shell companies, and a list of names that matched those from Marcus's files, each with associated dollar amounts. The USB contained security footage from the Lakeview building, date-stamped recordings showing Elliot, Marcus, and others I didn't recognize entering and exiting the office at all hours. One clip clearly showed Elliot and Avery arriving together, Avery visibly distressed as Marcus met them in the lobby. I added everything to my growing evidence file, the pieces forming an increasingly clear picture of a sophisticated operation. This wasn't just about me, or even just about financial fraud. This was organized, systematic exploitation targeting multiple women over years. As midnight approached, I received a text from Vanessa. All set for tomorrow, 10 a.m. Bring everything. I replied simply, I will, and I have more than we discussed. Sleep eluded me that night. I kept replaying Avery's words, Marcus's threats, the fear in Diana's handwritten note. The scale of what I was confronting should have terrified me, but instead I felt an odd calm. For the first time since the engagement party, I was acting rather than reacting. I had spent my life avoiding conflict, seeking approval, trying to be good enough. That woman had been the perfect target for Elliot and Marcus. But she was gone now, replaced by someone stronger. Someone who understood that the most effective response to betrayal wasn't loud revenge, but quiet, methodical justice. Dawn found me at my kitchen table, evidence organized, backup drives prepared, timeline completed. Whatever happened at today's meeting would set events in motion that couldn't be reversed. Marcus was right about one thing. Some paths, once taken, couldn't be undone. I was choosing my path deliberately. With clear eyes and steady hands, I was preparing to dismantle the system that had been designed to destroy me. They had chosen the wrong woman to betray. The Financial Crimes Division occupied a nondescript floor in a government building downtown. Detective Lorraine Hayes met me in the lobby, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s with cropped silver hair and a no-nonsense handshake. Ms. Winters, she said, scanning my professional attire with approval. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for meeting with me. I clutched my laptop bag containing everything I'd gathered. She led me through security and up to a small conference room where Vanessa already waited, along with a serious young man introduced as Agent Thomas Porter from the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. The Bureau is interested in patterns spanning multiple jurisdictions, Detective Hayes explained, noticing my surprise at the federal presence. Ms. Reed's case crosses state lines, as does yours. For the next 3 hours, I methodically presented my evidence. The financial records, Marcus's files, the storage unit theft, the workplace demotion, the settlement offer, all documented with dates, screenshots, and witness information. Detective Hayes remained expressionless throughout, but Agent Porter became increasingly animated, interrupting occasionally to clarify connections between names and entities. And you're certain about these offshore accounts? He asked, studying the printouts Diana had provided. I can't verify them personally, I admitted. They came from a confidential source with direct access to Marcus Chambers' records. Diana Chambers, Vanessa guessed quietly. I nodded. She's taking significant risk. This is extensive, Detective Hayes said finally, reviewing her notes. The coordination between financial institutions, legal manipulation, and the consistent pattern would be compelling on its own. But combined with Ms. Reed's case and these other incidents you've documented. We've been building this case for nearly a year, Agent Porter added. but we've struggled to find victims willing to come forward with comprehensive evidence. Most are too devastated, financially and emotionally, to fight back. Or legally silenced by settlements, Vanessa added bitterly. What happens now? I asked. We'll need formal statements, Detective Hayes replied, and you'll have to be prepared for significant pushback. Men like Marcus Chambers have resources and connections. I understand the risk. Do you? The detective's gaze was penetrating. Once we move forward, there's no backing out. They'll come after you with everything they have. Legal threats, character assassination, financial pressure. They've already taken everything that matters, I said quietly. What else can they do? The meeting concluded with arrangements for formal statements later that week. As we gathered our materials, Agent Porter stepped closer to me. There's something else you should know, he said, voice lowered. We've been investigating Chambers Holdings for months. The company structure is unusual. Are you familiar with it? I shook my head. Only that it owns the building where Marcus keeps his private office. It's a complicated web of shell companies and trusts. Our forensic accountants are still untangling it. He hesitated. But we did discover something you might find relevant. The controlling interest doesn't belong to Marcus Chambers. It's to Elliot, then? No. He glanced at Detective Hayes, who nodded slightly. According to our records, 26% of Chambers Holdings, the controlling interest, is held in trust by Winters Holdings, LLC. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Winters, as in my family? The trust was established by Eleanor Winters in 2008. Does that name mean anything to you? My grandmother. My throat tightened. She was my grandmother. She died 3 years ago. Agent Porter and Detective Hayes exchanged looks. The trust has specific succession provisions, he continued. Upon Eleanor Winters' death, control passes to her granddaughter, you, but only after certain conditions are met. What conditions? We don't have the complete trust documents, but it appears the control transfers on your 35th birthday or... He consulted his notes. Upon the dissolution of any engagement or marriage to a member of the Chambers family, whichever occurs first. The implications crashed over me like a wave. My grandmother knew about them. It seems so, Detective Hayes said. When is your 35th birthday, Miss Winters? Next month, December 12th. Another meaningful look between the investigators. And when did Elliot Chambers break your engagement? The pattern suddenly became clear. 3 weeks before my birthday. They were rushing to get out before the trust transferred. That would be our assessment as well, Agent Porter confirmed. Based on the financial movements we've traced, there's been a significant rush to liquidate and transfer assets from Chambers Holdings over the past month. I sat back, mind reeling. My grandmother, the elegant, reserved woman who had raised me after my parents died, had known about the Chambers family, had anticipated this very scenario, had built a protection I never knew existed. How could they not know about this? I wondered aloud. Marcus is meticulous about financial details. The trust is exceptionally well structured, Agent Porter explained. Multiple layers of corporate veils, managed through a firm in Switzerland. Even our financial analysts have had difficulty tracking it. There's something else, Detective Hayes added. A safety deposit box at First National Bank, registered to Eleanor Winters with you as co-signatory. According to bank records, it hasn't been accessed since her death. The sensation of pieces clicking into place was almost physical. I need to go there, now. Detective Hayes nodded. Agent Porter will accompany you. An hour later, I sat in a private room at First National Bank, the contents of my grandmother's safety deposit box spread before me. Agent Porter waited discreetly in the corner as I examined each item with trembling hands. The box contained legal documents, the complete trust agreement for Chambers Holdings, detailing my grandmother's controlling interest and the specific succession terms. But it also held something more personal, a leather-bound journal, its pages filled with my grandmother's elegant handwriting. The first entry was dated nearly 40 years earlier. Marcus Chambers approached again about the merger. His charm doesn't disguise his intentions. He wants control of Winters Pharmaceuticals, not partnership. Harold doesn't see it. I must protect what my father built. My grandmother had been the silent power behind Winters Pharmaceuticals, the company my grandfather had fronted, but that had been founded by her father. A company that had been acquired by Chambers Consolidated decades ago, in what the business press had called a friendly merger. The journal documented years of Marcus's manipulations, first aimed at my grandparents, then, most disturbingly, at my parents before their death in what I had always believed was a random car accident. The final entries, dated shortly before her death, mentioned me specifically. Mia has met Elliot Chambers. Not coincidence, I'm certain. Marcus has always played the long game. She is too much like her mother, trusting, giving, seeing the best in people. I have arranged what protection I can. The trust is secure. Vincent has the letters if the worst happens. She will need them when she discovers the truth. Vincent, my grandmother's attorney, the man I hadn't spoken to since her funeral. I looked up at Agent Porter. I need to contact Vincent Green at Green and Associates. He nodded, stepping outside to give me privacy. My hands still shaking, I dialed the number for my grandmother's law firm. Vincent Green's office. This is Mia Winters. I need to speak with Mr. Green immediately. It's about Eleanor Winters' trust. A pause. One moment, Ms. Winters. Vincent's voice came on the line seconds later, alert despite his 80-plus years. Mia, I've been expecting your call. You have? For 3 years, my dear. Ever since your grandmother's passing. His tone softened. Though I confess I expected it under different circumstances. You know about Elliot, about the Chambers family. I've known Marcus Chambers for 50 years, he replied grimly, and I helped your grandmother establish safeguards against exactly this situation. The trust, the controlling interest in Chambers Holdings. Yes, and several other measures. A pause. I have been instructed to meet with you in person. Can you come to my office today? By late afternoon, I sat in Vincent Green's wood-paneled office, processing revelations that had transformed my understanding of my family history and my own recent experiences. Your grandmother was a remarkable woman, Vincent said, placing a sealed envelope before me. Brilliant in business, ruthless when protecting her family. She built Winters Pharmaceuticals into an industry leader when women weren't welcome in boardrooms. I had no idea. I'd known my grandmother as loving but reserved, more interested in her garden and books than business discussions. She preferred it that way, operated behind the scenes while your grandfather served as the public face. Vincent adjusted his glasses. When Marcus Chambers orchestrated the hostile takeover disguised as a merger, she appeared to surrender. But in reality, she spent the next 30 years building a financial fortress around what mattered most. The controlling interest in Chambers Holdings, among other assets. Vincent slid a folder across his desk. As of today, given the dissolution of your engagement to Elliot Chambers, you control approximately 34% of Chambers Consolidated's underlying assets, along with significant interest in their international subsidiaries. The figure was staggering. Why didn't she tell me any of this? Eleanor believed knowledge was dangerous where the Chambers family was concerned. Vincent's expression darkened. After what happened to your parents, she became extraordinarily cautious. My parents. I couldn't bring myself to finish the question. Vincent nodded gravely. Eleanor suspected their accident wasn't random. She could never prove it, but the timing, just as your father was about to assume leadership of the pharmaceutical division and had begun questioning certain financial arrangements, was suspicious. Grief and rage collided inside me. And she let me date Elliot, knowing who his family was? She had no legal way to interfere in your personal life, but she put every possible protection in place. He gestured to the envelope, including this, to be opened only in the event of your engagement to a Chambers. With unsteady fingers, I broke the seal and unfolded a single sheet of my grandmother's stationery. My dearest Mia, if you're reading this, I have failed to protect you from the Chambers family's influence. For that, I am deeply sorry. By now, you will have experienced their true nature, the charming facade masking ruthless ambition. What you must understand is that they have pursued our family for generations. What began as business rivalry became obsession. Marcus Chambers has spent his life attempting to control what my father built, what I expanded, what your parents would have inherited, and what should rightfully be yours. The trust I established gives you control they never anticipated. Use it wisely. Use it to protect yourself and to ensure they can never harm another family as they have attempted to harm ours. You are stronger than you know, my darling girl. You have my resilience, your mother's compassion, and your father's integrity. These qualities will guide you, with all my love and faith in you, grandmother. Tears blurred my vision as I refolded the letter. My grandmother had seen this coming, had known the Chambers family would eventually target me directly, had prepared for it with quiet, meticulous determination. What do I do now? I asked Vincent. That depends on what you want. The elderly lawyer studied me carefully. The trust gives you options. You could sell your interests and remove yourself completely from their world. You could maintain silent control, exercising influence without their knowledge, or I could make them aware of exactly who they've underestimated. A small smile crossed Vincent's face. That would be the approach Eleanor might have favored. How quickly can we move? The trust transfer paperwork is prepared. Has been for 3 years. Vincent pressed a button on his desk. Margaret, bring in the Winters succession documents, please. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of signatures and legal discussions. By the time I left Vincent's office, I was no longer just Mia Winters, jilted fiancé and corporate underling. I was now the controlling shareholder in the company that owned my oppressors. The irony was almost too perfect. While Elliot and Marcus had been systematically stripping me of financial resources and professional standing, they had actually accelerated my acquisition of power over their empire. I spent the evening in my apartment, processing the day's revelations while organizing my approach. The financial crimes investigation would proceed regardless, but my newfound position offered additional leverage. Just after midnight, my phone rang. Diana Chambers. "Mia," she sounded breathless. "I need to see you. It's urgent." "What's happened?" "Marcus knows. About the documents I gave you, about my meeting with you. Elliot is at the house now with him. She lowered her voice. "They're destroying records. And they're planning something for you." "What specifically?" "I don't know details, but I heard Marcus tell Elliot to make the call. Something about ensuring you have no credibility left." Her voice shook. "I'm afraid for you. Where can we meet?" "The Botanical Garden Cafe, 1 hour." I dressed quickly, choosing practical clothes and flat shoes I could move in if necessary. Something about Diana's call felt off. Too convenient, too dramatic. After the day's revelations, I was questioning everything. Before leaving, I made 2 calls, one to Vanessa, briefly explaining the situation and asking her to be on standby, and one to Detective Hayes, leaving a detailed message about my meeting with Diana and my concerns. The Botanical Garden was technically closed, but the small cafe at its entrance operated with extended hours during special exhibitions. When I arrived, the space was dimly lit and nearly empty, just a barista cleaning equipment and 2 couples at distant tables. Diana wasn't there. I ordered tea and selected a table with clear sightlines to both the entrance and the emergency exit. 20 minutes passed with no sign of her. My unease grew with each passing minute. Just as I was about to leave, a text arrived from Diana's number. "Parking lot, blue sedan, can't come inside." I approached the cafe window, scanning the parking area. A blue sedan was indeed parked in the shadows at the far end, its interior too dark to see clearly. Every instinct warned against going outside alone, and instead, I called Diana's number. It rang 4 times before connecting. "Diana, I'm inside. Why don't you join me?" A male voice answered, "Elliot." "She can't come to the phone right now, Mia." Ice flooded my veins. "Where is she?" "Safe. Worried about you, though." His tone was conversational, as if we were discussing dinner plans, rather than what was clearly a trap. "Why don't you come out to the car so we can talk?" "I think I'll stay where I am. Public place, security cameras, much safer." A pause. "Always the cautious one." That's why I loved you, so careful, so measured, until recently. People change, especially after betrayal. Is that what you think happened? Betrayal? Elliot's laugh was hollow. You have no idea what's really going on, Mia. I think I do. The financial fraud, the pattern of targeting women, Marcus' elaborate schemes, my grandmother's trust. I let the last part hang in the air. The silence that followed told me what I needed to know. They hadn't discovered the trust transfer yet. What trust? Elliot's voice had lost its confidence. The one that gives me controlling interest in Chambers Holdings. The one that activated the moment you broke our engagement. Another silence, longer this time. I could almost hear him calculating, reassessing. You're bluffing, he said finally. There's no such trust. Call Vincent Green at Green & Associates. He executed the paperwork this afternoon. The line went dead. Through the window, I saw the blue sedan's headlights switch on, illuminating a figure slumped in the passenger seat. Diana, apparently unconscious. I dialed 911 immediately, reporting a possible kidnapping and medical emergency. As I spoke, the sedan pulled away, moving faster than was prudent in a parking lot. Within minutes, Detective Hayes called back. Are you safe? She demanded without preamble. Yes, but Diana Chambers isn't. They just left the Botanical Garden parking lot in a blue sedan. She appeared unconscious in the passenger seat. We're tracking her phone. Stay where you are. Officers are en route to your location. By morning, the situation had escalated beyond anything I could have imagined. Diana had been found unharmed but heavily sedated at her home, with Elliot claiming she'd had a psychiatric episode, requiring medication. Marcus was reportedly on a flight to Switzerland, and I had received formal notice that Elliot had filed for an emergency psychological evaluation order against me, claiming I was delusional and paranoid following our breakup. Vincent arrived at the police station where I'd spent the night giving statements, his dignified presence a stabilizing force amid the chaos. The psychological evaluation petition has already been dismissed, he informed me. The judge was not impressed by the timing or the circumstances, and I've filed the trust documents with the corporate registry. They're public record now. How are they responding? Chambers' consolidated stock is down 18% in pre-market trading. The board has called an emergency meeting for 9 a.m. Vincent checked his watch, which gives us approximately 90 minutes to prepare your entrance. My entrance. As controlling shareholder, you have the right to attend any board meeting. His eyes twinkled with something approaching mischief. Eleanor would have wanted you to exercise that right with appropriate impact. By 8:55 a.m., I stood in the elevator of Chambers Consolidated's headquarters, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit in deep burgundy, a color my grandmother had often worn to make weak men uncomfortable, as she'd once told me. Vincent stood beside me, briefcase in hand, the picture of legal authority. Ready? He asked as the elevator approached the executive floor. I thought of my grandmother's letter, of my parents, of Vanessa and the other women whose lives had been deliberately damaged, of my own journey from bewildered victim to informed adversary. Absolutely ready. The boardroom fell silent as we entered. 12 men and 1 woman sat around the massive table, expressions ranging from confusion to outright hostility. Elliot occupied a chair near the head of the table, his face draining of color as he recognized me. Excuse me, a silver-haired man I recognized as the company president began. This is a private meeting. Vincent stepped forward smoothly. Charles, it's been too long. May I introduce Mia Winters, controlling shareholder of Chambers Holdings and beneficial owner of 34% of Chambers Consolidated. The silence deepened as Vincent distributed document folders to each board member. This is absurd, Elliot finally sputtered. She has no standing here. On the contrary, Vincent replied, opening his own folder. Ms. Winters' grandmother, Eleanor Winters, established irrevocable control of Chambers Holdings through a series of trusts and shell companies in 2008. That control passed to Ms. Winters upon the dissolution of her engagement to Elliot Chambers 3 weeks ago. The board president flipped through the documents, his expression growing increasingly grave. These appear to be in order. They are, Vincent confirmed. Additionally, Ms. Winters has initiated proceedings with the SEC regarding certain financial irregularities discovered during her review of company operations. The woman board member, the only one present, leaned forward. What irregularities specifically? I stepped forward then, finding my voice stronger than I had anticipated. Systematic identity theft and financial fraud perpetrated against multiple women over a period of years. Misappropriation of corporate resources to facilitate these schemes. Offshore accounts used to conceal the proceeds. And most recently, attempting to artificially depress company value to facilitate a buyout before my assumption of control. Uproar erupted around the table. Elliot half rose from his seat, face contorted with rage. This is defamation. She's unstable, delusional from our breakup. I have evidence of everything I've described, I continued calmly, which I've already provided to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. The board president raised a hand for silence. These are serious allegations that must be investigated through proper channels. Ms. Winters, while your ownership position is noted, this doesn't give you authority to make unsubstantiated claims in a board meeting. They aren't unsubstantiated, I replied, nodding to Vincent, who withdrew a flash drive from his pocket. This contains documentation of every allegation, including witness statements, financial records, and Marcus Chambers' own files detailing the operation. Where's Marcus? Someone asked. According to his assistant, he's on medical leave in Switzerland, the president replied, his expression suggesting he doubted this explanation. How convenient, I observed. Elliot pushed back from the table. I don't have to listen to this slander. Sit down, Elliot, the board president ordered. If there's any truth to these allegations, every person in this room is potentially liable. We need to understand exactly what we're facing. For the next hour, I outlined the scheme as I had uncovered it. The pattern of targeting women with financial resources, the systematic isolation and gaslighting, the identity theft and fraud, all conducted under the protection of the Chamber's name and resources. When I finished, the boardroom was silent except for the sound of Elliot's ragged breathing. The financial crimes investigation will proceed regardless of any actions taken by this board, Vincent added into the silence. But Ms. Winters is prepared to discuss terms under which she might use her controlling interest to protect the company's overall stability during this process. The woman board member, who had introduced herself as Dr. Heller during my presentation, spoke up. What terms specifically? I met her gaze directly. Full cooperation with authorities, immediate suspension of Marcus and Elliot Chambers pending investigation, restitution to all identified victims, and a corporate restructuring that places the pharmaceutical division, originally Winters Pharmaceuticals, under separate management. That's, the president began, entirely reasonable given the circumstances, Dr. Heller interrupted. Charles, we need to call an executive session to discuss this. Elliot slammed his fist on the table. This is a coup. She has no right. She has every right, Vincent cut in smoothly, and significantly more evidence than we've presented today. The board president studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Ms. Winters, would you and Mr. Green give us the room for 30 minutes? In the anteroom outside the boardroom, Vincent poured us each coffee from a silver service. You did well in there, he said. Your grandmother would be proud. I wish I'd known her better, I replied, a familiar ache of loss mingling with new understanding. Known who she really was. She protected you the only way she knew how, by keeping you separate from this world. Vincent gestured toward the boardroom. But she also prepared you to face it when necessary. How do you think that they'll respond? They'll accept your terms. The alternative is protracted public scandal and potential criminal charges for the board if they're found to have been negligent. Vincent sipped his coffee. Eleanor built a perfect trap, one they walked into willingly. When we were called back 30 minutes later, the boardroom had noticeably emptied. Elliot was gone, as were several other members. Ms. Winters, the president began formally, the board has voted to accept your terms in principle, pending legal review of specific implementation details. Victory washed over me, not in a rush of triumph, but in waves of vindication. For my grandmother, for my parents, for Vanessa and the other women, and finally for myself. I'm pleased to hear it, I said simply. When can we begin? By that evening, the business press was running breaking stories about a major leadership shakeup at Chambers Consolidated. Elliot had been escorted from the building by security. Marcus remained unreachable in Switzerland, and I had been installed in a temporary office on the executive floor, reviewing files with a team of forensic accountants. At midnight, alone in what had once been Marcus's office, I finally allowed myself a moment to absorb the magnitude of the day's events. The view from the floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city spread before me, lights twinkling like the stars my grandmother had taught me to identify as a child. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Just saw the news. Can hardly believe it. You did the impossible." I smiled, thinking of my grandmother's letter. Not impossible, just prepared. Another text arrived from Diana, recovered from her sedation. "Elliot gone. Marcus not answering calls. Bored in chaos. What happened?" I considered how to respond, then simply wrote, "Justice happened. Are you safe? Yes. Staying with friends. Will you tell me everything? Soon. Rest now." As I prepared to leave for the night, Dr. Heller appeared in the doorway. "Working late?" she asked, leaning against the frame. "First day. Lots to absorb." She nodded, studying me with intelligent eyes. "I knew your grandmother, Not well, but we sat on a pharmaceutical regulatory board together years ago." "What was she like? In business, I mean." "Formidable, principled, 3 steps ahead of everyone else in the room." Dr. Heller smiled slightly. "Much like her granddaughter, it seems." The comparison warmed me unexpectedly. "I hope so." "You know this isn't over," she said, her expression growing serious. "Marcus won't stay in Switzerland forever. Elliot has family connections beyond Chambers. They'll regroup, counterattack. I'm counting on it." I closed the laptop before me. My grandmother spent decades preparing for this battle. I'm just continuing what she started. Dr. Heller studied me a moment longer, then nodded. "The board meets again tomorrow at 10. We'll expect you." After she left, I stood by the window once more, watching the city that had been my home transform into something new. A battlefield, perhaps, but also a place of possibility. For the first time since the engagement party, I felt not just determined, but genuinely powerful. They had chosen their first love, power, control, money, over basic human decency. They had been certain I would crumble, accept their terms, disappear quietly with my shame and losses. They had underestimated 3 generations of Winters women, and they were about to learn exactly what that mistake would cost them. The annual Chambers Foundation Charity Gala arrived exactly 2 weeks after my boardroom revelation. Traditionally held at the prestigious Ashford Hotel, the event gathered the city's financial and social elite for an evening of conspicuous philanthropy and business networking. In previous years, I had attended on Elliot's arm, carefully dressed to compliment but never outshine him, speaking when spoken to, smiling at all the right moments. This year would be different. "You don't have to attend," Vanessa said, as we shared lunch in my new office. Sunlight streamed through the windows, catching the ruby pendant at her throat, a gift to herself after finalizing her divorce from Elliot years ago. "No one would blame you for avoiding that particular snake pit." "I'm not avoiding anything anymore," I replied, studying the invitation on my desk. As major shareholder, my presence was expected, though I suspected the board secretly hoped I would decline. Besides, the foundation does legitimate good work, despite its founder's intentions. Vanessa smiled wryly. "Always seeing the best in things. That hasn't changed." "Some things haven't," I agreed, "but plenty has." In the 2 weeks since assuming control, I had immersed myself in understanding the Chamber's corporate structure. With Dr. Heller's guidance and Vincent's legal expertise, I had begun the process of separating the pharmaceutical division, my grandmother's legacy, from the more problematic financial services branches where Marcus had built his empire of exploitation. Marcus himself remained in Switzerland, communicating only through attorneys. Elliot, however, had begun a calculated counteroffensive, giving tearful interviews to sympathetic business reporters about his mentally unstable ex-fiancée, who was vindictively damaging a historic family company. The narrative was gaining traction in certain circles, creating divisions among board members and investors. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Hayes. "Judge signed warrants today. Moving forward next week, the financial crimes investigation was proceeding methodically, authorities building an airtight case before making any arrests. The delay was frustrating but necessary. Rushing would only give Marcus and Elliot room to maneuver. "What will you wear?" Vanessa asked, bringing me back to the gala discussion. "Something my grandmother would approve of," I said with a small smile. "Something that makes weak men uncomfortable." The evening of the gala arrived with perfect autumn weather. Crisp air, clear skies, a dramatic sunset painting the city skyline in shades of gold and crimson. I chose a gown in deep emerald green, structured and architectural rather than soft or romantic. My grandmother's diamonds glittered at my ears and throat, pieces I'd found in the safe deposit box with a note. "Wear these when you need to remind them who you are." I arrived precisely on time, neither fashionably late nor eagerly early. Vincent accompanied me, his distinguished presence beside me, a subtle reminder of the legal arsenal at my disposal. "Remember," he murmured as we approached the grand entrance, "you're not here as Elliot's ex-fiancée. You're here as the controlling shareholder of Chambers Holdings." "I know exactly who I am," I replied, head high as we crossed the threshold. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and the flash of expensive jewelry, the air heavy with perfume and the murmur of privileged conversation. Heads turned as we entered, whispers following in our wake. I recognized the pattern now, the surprise, the assessment, the strategic calculations visible in narrowed eyes and tightened smiles. Dr. Heller approached first, elegant in navy blue, champagne in hand. "Mia, I'm glad you came." "I wouldn't miss it," I replied, accepting the glass she offered. "The foundation's work is too important." "Indeed." Her gaze swept the room, though some attendees seem more concerned with the evening's drama than its charitable purpose. I followed her glance to where a cluster of board members stood, pointedly avoiding looking in our direction. "Have they chosen sides already?" "Most are waiting to see how the wind blows," she replied pragmatically. "Charles is still convinced this can all be handled quietly. Others aren't so sure." The others became apparent as the evening progressed. While some guests deliberately avoided me, others sought me out. Some from genuine curiosity, others hoping to secure their positions in the company's uncertain future. I navigated each conversation with calm poise, neither volunteering information nor refusing to engage. I was speaking with the hospital's chief of oncology about the foundation's research grants when a familiar cologne reached me moments before the voice. "Mia." Elliot materialized at my elbow, devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo, his smile tight. "You look well." "Elliot." I maintained my composure even as my heart rate accelerated. "I'm surprised to see you here." "It's my family's foundation," he replied smoothly. Despite recent complications, my presence was required. Dr. Chen, the oncologist, glanced between us with sudden discomfort. "I should find my wife, if you'll excuse me." As he retreated, Elliot moved closer, lowering his voice. "We need to talk privately." "I don't think we have anything to discuss without our attorneys present." His expression hardened briefly before he recovered. "This situation has spiraled out of control. There are better ways to resolve our personal issues than corporate warfare." "Is that what you think this is? Personal?" "Isn't it? You were hurt by our breakup, understandably so. But this vendetta against my family's company, these absurd allegations, the FBI doesn't issue warrants based on hurt feelings, Elliot." I kept my voice calm, even as rage bubbled beneath the surface. "Neither does the SEC." His careful mask slipped for a moment, genuine alarm flickering in his eyes. "Warrants?" I sipped my champagne, letting the moment stretch. "You should call your uncle in Switzerland, though I understand international calls from federal detention can be complicated." Elliot moved even closer, abandoning pretense. "You have no idea what you're doing, Mia. The people you're threatening, the interests involved, it's bigger than you can imagine." "I'm beginning to understand exactly how big it is," I countered, "which is why the investigation has expanded to include your family's banking operations in 3 countries. The color drained from his face. "You need to stop this now, before..." "Before what?" I met his gaze steadily. "Before more women discover what you've done to them. Before the board realizes how long they've been complicit." before prosecutors start offering deals to whoever talks first? His hand closed around my wrist, tight enough to hurt, but not enough to cause a scene. You think you've won, but this is just beginning. My family has weathered worse than a scorned woman with temporary leverage. I glanced pointedly at his hand until he released me. Is that why you approached me? To threaten me in public? Or were you hoping to charm me into compliance one last time? Before he could answer, Vincent appeared at my side, his timing impeccable. Ms. Winters, the foundation director would like a word about next year's research priorities. He nodded coolly to Elliot. Mr. Chambers. Elliot's jaw tightened, but he stepped back. This conversation isn't over, Mia. Yes, I said quietly. It is. As Vincent guided me away, I caught sight of Avery across the room, watching our exchange with naked anxiety. She had been conspicuously absent since our confrontation outside my office, sending only a brief text. Be careful, more going on than you know. I hadn't replied, unsure whether it was another manipulation or a genuine warning. Now, seeing her pale face and restless hands, I wondered again what hold Marcus had over my sister. The foundation director's conversation provided a welcome respite from the tension, focusing on practical matters of grant distribution and research priorities. As we discussed the pharmaceutical division's contributions to rare disease research, I glimpsed my reflection in a mirrored column, poised, engaged, authoritative. So different from the woman who had stood in these same rooms a year earlier, desperately seeking Elliot's approval. The evening progressed with the familiar rhythm of charity galas, dinner, speeches, auction, dancing. I remained visible but strategic, accepting dance offers from key board members and major donors while avoiding any situation that would leave me vulnerable to another confrontation with Elliot. During the auction portion, I bid generously on several items, conscious of the message it sent. I was not financially devastated, not desperate, not diminished by what they had tried to do to me. Each successful bid elicited murmurs of surprise and recalculation from those watching. It was nearing midnight when Diana Chambers finally approached me. She looked elegant but fragile, the strain of recent weeks evident in the tightness around her eyes. Mia, she said softly, could we speak privately? I glanced at Vincent, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Briefly, I agreed. We moved to a small alcove off the main ballroom, partially concealed by potted palms. Diana's hands twisted nervously at her clutch bag. I wanted to apologize, she began, for that night at the botanical garden. Elliot told me you were in danger, that he needed to warn you about something Marcus was planning. I didn't know. She broke off, visibly distressed. That it was a trap? I finished for her. She nodded miserably. When I realized what was happening, I tried to call out to you, but the sedative was already working. I would never intentionally help them hurt you. I studied her face, searching for deception, but finding only exhaustion and what appeared to be genuine remorse. I believe you, I said finally. But I need to know what's happening with Marcus. Why Switzerland? Why now? Diana glanced around nervously before leaning closer. It's not just Switzerland. He's moving money, closing accounts. I found documents in his study. He's been preparing for months, liquidating assets. Almost as if he knew this was coming. What about Elliot? What's his role now? Damage control. Marcus left him specific instructions. Discredit you publicly, stall the board, pressure certain members to resist your changes. Her voice dropped further. Marcus believes this will all blow over if they can undermine your credibility long enough. And you? Where do you stand in all this? Diana's eyes filled with tears. I've enabled too much for too long, made excuses, looked away, told myself it was just business. She straightened her shoulders with visible effort. No more. I have information, banking details, offshore accounts, recordings of conversations. Things that could help your case. My suspicion flared. Why offer this now? Why not go directly to the authorities? Because I need protection, she admitted. When Marcus discovers I've turned on him, and he will, I'll need somewhere safe to go, resources he can't trace. The request was clear, if unspoken. Help in exchange for evidence. Before I could respond, a commotion from the main ballroom drew our attention. We emerged from the alcove to find the elegant event descending into chaos. Security personnel were escorting someone toward the exit, guests parting before them like water. When the crowd shifted, I saw the central figure, Sophia, my former friend. Elliot's supposed first love, her designer dress rumpled, her mascara smeared with tears. "Just listen to me," she was shouting, attempting to twist from the security guard's grip. "Everyone needs to know what they're doing." Elliot hurried toward her, face rigid with controlled fury. "She's unwell," he announced to the staring crowd. "Too much champagne, I'm afraid." "Let her speak." The words left my mouth before I had fully considered them, carrying clearly across the sudden hush. All eyes turned to me. Elliot froze, his expression a study in barely contained rage. "Mia, don't encourage this," he began, but I was already moving forward, closing the distance to where Sophia stood, breathing heavily between two uncomfortable security guards. "What did you want to say, Sophia?" I asked calmly. Her eyes, red-rimmed and desperate, found mine. Recognition flashed, followed by something like shame. "It's happening again," she said, her voice steadier now that someone was listening. "The same pattern, the lawsuits, the transfers, the psychiatric episodes, they're already setting up the next one." "The next what?" I prompted, though I already suspected. "The next you. The next me. They never stop, Mia." She fumbled in her purse, withdrawing a folded document. "Investment proposal for a new target. They already have someone lined up to replace you." She thrust the papers toward me just as Elliot lunged forward. "That's enough." The security guards, uncertain whose authority to follow, hesitated. In that moment of confusion, I took the document from Sophia's trembling hand. "Ms. Winters," one of the foundation board members began, "perhaps this isn't the appropriate venue." "On the contrary," I replied, unfolding the papers, "I think it's exactly the right venue." The document was exactly what Sophia had claimed, a detailed profile of a woman named Rebecca Chen, talented software developer with a promising startup, recently divorced, limited family connections. Margin notes in what I recognized as Marcus's handwriting outlined a familiar approach strategy, with Elliot designated as the primary contact. I looked up to find Elliot watching me, all pretense abandoned, his expression cold and calculating. "You see what you've done to her?" he said loudly, gesturing towards Sophia. "The same hysteria you've been spreading, paranoid delusions about business documents." But the damage was done. Guests were murmuring, phones discreetly capturing the unfolding drama, board members exchanging concerned glances. "Sophia," I said, ignoring Elliot completely, "would you be willing to speak with some people about what you know, officially?" She nodded, relief flooding her tear-streaked face. "That's why I came. I couldn't—" She glanced at Elliot, genuine fear flashing in her eyes. "I couldn't let it happen to someone else." "You're both unhinged," Elliot snapped, abandoning his charming facade entirely. "This performance is just proving what I've been saying all along about your mental state." "Is that your professional diagnosis, Mr. Chambers?" Dr. Heller stepped forward, her tone scalpel sharp. "Because as an actual board-certified psychiatrist, I see nothing here suggesting psychiatric issues. I do, however, see textbook patterns of gaslighting and manipulation." A ripple of reaction moved through the crowd. Elliot's gaze darted around, seeking allies, finding fewer than he had expected. "This company has serious work to do," I announced, my voice carrying clearly in the tense silence. "Work that can't wait for litigation or investigations to conclude. Effective immediately, I am calling for an independent audit of all Chambers Foundation finances and grant allocations." The foundation director blanched. "Ms. Winters, surely." "Additionally," I continued, "all current selection processes for investments and partnerships are suspended pending review. And Mr. Chambers is relieved of any foundation responsibilities until further notice." Elliot's face contorted with rage. "You can't do that. This is my family's—" "Your family's name on a legal entity that I now control," I finished for him. "Just as I control the company that provides 90% of this foundation's funding." The room had gone completely silent. Hundreds of wealthy, powerful people witnessing Elliot Chambers' public unraveling. This isn't over, he hissed, stepping closer. You think you've won? You have no idea what you're dealing with? On the contrary, I replied quietly. I know exactly what I'm dealing with. A systematic pattern of fraud, exploitation, and abuse hidden behind wealth and social position. I turned to address the room at large. For years, the Chamber's name has been associated with philanthropy and business excellence. It's time that reputation reflected reality rather than careful public relations. From the corner of my eye, I saw Vincent discreetly recording on his phone, while several journalists who had been covering the gala were furiously taking notes. This would be in the business press by morning. Elliot made one last attempt, his voice cracking with desperation. Mia, please. We need to discuss this privately. I made a mistake with us. I see that now. What we had was real, is real. We can fix this. The sincerity in his expression was perfect. The exact look that had once made my heart race with hope and validation. Now I recognized it as his most practiced performance. No, I said simply. The single word hung in the air between us. No explanation, no qualification, no opening for negotiation. Just a clean, final refusal. Elliot flinched as if I'd slapped him. Around us, whispers grew into a steady murmur of reaction and speculation. Security guards, now receiving clear instructions from Foundation officials, moved to escort both Elliot and Sophia from the premises through separate exits. As Elliot was led away, he turned back once, his expression naked with a mixture of rage and disbelief. In that unguarded moment, I saw what I had never fully recognized during our relationship. How completely he had believed in his own invincibility. How inconceivable it was to him that someone he had marked as a victim could become a greater power than himself. In the aftermath of their departure, the gala attempted to resume its normal rhythm, but the atmosphere had fundamentally shifted. Guests approached me differently now, with newfound respect or carefully concealed apprehension, depending on their connections to the Chamber's empire. Diana had vanished during the confrontation. A text arrived from an unknown number. Meet tomorrow, have everything documented. We'll testify. I forwarded it to Detective Hayes with a brief note, another potential witness coming forward. Vanessa found me as I prepared to leave, her expression a mixture of amazement and concern. Well, that was dramatic. Not my intention, I admitted, but perhaps necessary. Sophia was one of their recruits, she said. Before they set her up with Elliot, she approached me, asking strange questions about my marriage and finances. I never connected it until I saw her tonight. They use women against other women, I said, remembering Avery's role, her warning, her fear. It's part of the isolation strategy. Speaking of which, Vanessa nodded discreetly toward the entrance. Your sister has been waiting there for 20 minutes, looking terrified. I followed her gaze to where Avery stood, hunched and anxious, clutching her purse like a shield. Despite everything, my heart ached at how small she looked. I should talk to her, I said. Vanessa caught my arm. Be careful. Remember what they've done before. I remember everything, I assured her. But I also remember who she was before they got to her. I crossed the now thinning crowd to where Avery waited, her eyes widening as I approached. I wasn't sure you'd speak to me, she said, voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't sure either, I admitted. I saw what happened with Elliot and Sophia. It's all coming apart, isn't it? I studied my sister's face, the dark circles under her eyes, the tension in her jaw. Yes, it is. I need to tell you things, she said urgently. Not here, but soon, before it's too late. Too late for what? She glanced over her shoulder, genuine fear in the gesture. They're desperate now, especially Marcus. The things he's been saying about you. She shuddered. Come home with me tonight, I offered impulsively. Whatever you need to say, whatever you're afraid of. We can figure it out together. For a moment, hope flashed across her face, quickly replaced by resignation. I can't, not yet. There are things I have to take care of first. Evidence I need to secure. Evidence of what, Avery? Everything. She squeezed my hand briefly. I'm so sorry, Mia, for all of it. I didn't understand what I was part of until it was too late. Before I could respond, she turned and hurried toward the exit, pulling her coat tightly around herself like armor. Vincent appeared at my elbow. Is everything all right? I'm not sure, I said honestly, but I think Avery is finally choosing a side. Let's hope it's the right one, he replied grimly. The next few days will be critical. He was right. The confrontation at the gala had accelerated everything. There would be no more subtle maneuvering, no more pretense of normalcy. The battle was now fully in the open. As my car pulled away from the hotel, I watched the glittering lights of the charity gala recede in the rear window. The evening had not gone as anyone had planned. Not Elliot, not the board, not even myself. Yet somehow, amidst the chaos and public drama, a corner had been turned. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Hayes. Saw the news already breaking. Good work. We move on the warrants first thing Monday. 2 days. In just 2 days, the financial crimes investigation would become public knowledge. Arrests would be made. The full machinery of justice would engage with what had previously been hidden behind wealth and influence. I leaned back against the leather seat, physically exhausted but mentally alert. The confrontation had been necessary, but it had also made me a more visible target. Elliot and Marcus would be desperate now, willing to use whatever leverage or tactics they had left. As if sensing my thoughts, Vincent spoke from beside me. You should consider additional security, at least until the arrests are made. I'm having the apartment locks changed tomorrow, I said, and I've been staying at different hotels every few nights. He nodded approval. Good. Don't underestimate their resources, even now. I won't, I promised. I haven't underestimated them since the night of my engagement party. As we drove through the quiet streets, I recalled Elliot's final expression. The shock, the rage, the dawning realization that he had lost control, not just of the situation, but of the narrative itself. For men like Elliot and Marcus, perception was everything. Tonight, that perception had shattered irreparably. But it wasn't over. Despite the public confrontation, despite the pending arrest, despite everything I had achieved in the past weeks, I knew better than to declare victory prematurely. There would be counterattacks, legal and personal. There would be attempts to discredit me, to isolate me, to frighten me into retreat. They had chosen their first love, power, over basic human decency. They had been certain I would break, that I would accept whatever crumbs they offered in settlement, that I would be too ashamed, too frightened, too broken to fight back. They had been wrong, and on Monday they would begin to understand exactly how wrong they had been. Epilogue. 1 year later. The ocean stretched before me in shimmering ribbons of gold and azure, morning sunlight dancing across its surface as waves gently rolled toward the shore. I inhaled deeply, filling my lungs with salty air, letting the rhythmic sound of the surf wash away the last lingering tensions from the week. My oceanfront terrace had become my sanctuary over the past year, a place of quiet reflection and gradual healing. The house itself, a modern structure of glass and weathered wood perched on the cliffs, had been my grandmother's secret retreat. Vincent had presented me with the deed 6 months ago, another piece of my inheritance carefully hidden from the Chambers family's awareness. Your grandmother bought this property through a shell corporation 20 years ago, he had explained as we toured the dust-covered rooms. She called it her contingency plan, a place no one could find unless she wanted them to. I had spent weekends renovating it, transforming the space into something that honored Eleanor's legacy while reflecting my own emerging identity. Now, as I sipped my morning coffee from a handmade ceramic mug, I felt her presence in the breeze, in the carefully tended native garden, in the strength I had discovered within myself. My phone buzzed on the glass table beside me. Vanessa's name flashed on the screen. Morning, I answered, watching a pair of dolphins break the surface in the distance. You're up early. Have you seen the news? Her voice hummed with satisfaction. The sentencing came down an hour ago. I set my coffee down and 12 years for Marcus, 8 for Elliot. No possibility of parole until they've served at least 80%. The triumph in her voice was unmistakable. The judge cited the extraordinary calculation and cruelty of their schemes. Despite having anticipated this outcome, having worked toward it methodically for a year, the finality of the sentence still struck me with unexpected force. Any statement from their attorneys? The usual. They'll appeal, they maintain their innocence. They're being persecuted by vindictive women. Vanessa's laugh held no humor. But the evidence was overwhelming. 17 victims testified, Mia. 17 women whose lives they systematically attempted to destroy. Including Avery, though I didn't say this aloud. My sister's testimony had been perhaps the most damaging. Her detailed account of how Marcus had first compromised her with doctored financial records, then used that leverage to recruit her into their schemes. Her vulnerability on the stand, her tearful apology to me in front of the court, had affected the jury visibly. What about the civil cases? I asked, though I already knew the general status. The settlement fund is being finalized next week. Over $30 million to be distributed among the identified victims. Vanessa paused. Your decision to contribute the profits from selling the financial services division was unexpected. You didn't have to do that. It felt right, I said simply. My grandmother built her company to help people. Seemed fitting that its value should repair some of the damage done. After the criminal charges had been filed, I had moved swiftly to restructure Chambers Consolidated. The pharmaceutical division had been separated and renamed Winters Research and Development, refocused on its original mission of medical innovation. The financial services branches, where Marcus had built his empire of exploitation, had been sold to a consortium with an impeccable ethical record, the proceeds directed toward restitution. The foundation gala is tonight, Vanessa reminded me. Will I see you there? I'll be there. The renamed Eleanor Winters Foundation was hosting its first major event since the restructuring, a fundraiser for financial literacy and victim advocacy programs. Vincent's picking me up at 6. After we hung up, I remained on the terrace, watching the ocean's ceaseless motion. 1 year, just 1 year since my world had been shattered and rebuilt. The path had not been easy or straight. There had been legal battles, media scrutiny, personal reckonings that had tested my resolve daily. Yet through it all, I had discovered strengths I never knew I possessed, connections I hadn't fully valued, and a purpose that extended beyond my own healing. My phone chimed with a calendar reminder, board meeting at 11. Even on Saturdays, the work continued. The restructured company required constant attention as we rebuilt both operations and reputation. I had initially planned to serve as interim chairperson only until stability was restored, but discovered an unexpected aptitude for corporate governance. My grandmother's journals, which I still read regularly, suggested she would have approved. As I dressed for the meeting, selecting a light linen suit appropriate for the late summer heat, I thought about how my definition of justice had evolved over the past year. What had begun as a desire for personal vindication had transformed into something broader, a commitment to structural change, to creating safeguards that would prevent similar abuses. The drive into the city took me past familiar landmarks now imbued with different meanings. The coffee shop where I had first met with Vanessa, now a place I visited regularly to mentor young professional women. The botanical garden where Diana had been drugged, recently rejuvenated with funding from the Eleanor Winters Foundation. The Chambers Consolidated headquarters now bearing the Winters name on its facade. Diana greeted me in the lobby, elegant as always, but softer somehow. The perpetual tension she had carried during her marriage replaced with quiet confidence. After providing crucial evidence against Marcus, she had faced a choice: retreat from public life entirely or channel her experience into advocacy. She had chosen the latter, joining the foundation board and becoming one of our most effective spokespeople. Ready for this? She asked as we rode the elevator to the boardroom. The pharmaceutical acquisition proposal is controversial. I've reviewed all the materials, I assured her. The company culture aligns with our values and their research directions complement ours. The meeting proceeded efficiently, board members no longer surprised by my thorough preparation and clear decision-making. When we adjourned 2 hours later, Dr. Heller, now my chief medical officer, lingered behind. You've built something remarkable here, she said, gathering her papers. In just a year, Eleanor would be proud. I'm still learning, I admitted. Every day. That's what makes you effective, she smiled. You never assume you know everything. After the meeting, I had lunch with Avery at a small restaurant near her new apartment. Our relationship had required the most delicate rebuilding of all, trust shattered, then painstakingly reconstructed through honest conversations and professional therapy. She was still finding her way, working at an entry-level position with a nonprofit focused on financial abuse prevention. "How's the new place?" I asked as we settled at our table, sunshine streaming through the windows to warm the wooden surfaces. "Small but perfect." Her smile was genuine, if still carrying shadows of past guilt. "The therapy group meets there twice a week now. Having my own space to host them feels healing." "I'm glad." I reached for her hand across the table, a gesture that had become easier with time. "You're doing important work." "Because of you," she said quietly. "You could have abandoned me after everything I did. Most people would have." "We're family," I said simply. "That means something." We talked about ordinary things then: a movie she'd seen, a book I was reading, plans for the holidays still months away. The comfortable rhythm of sisters rebuilding a relationship scoured clean of secrets and manipulation. As we were finishing dessert, Avery hesitated, then pulled an envelope from her bag. "I've been meaning to give you this. It's the last of the documents I found in Marcus's study before everything. I didn't think they were important then, but looking at them now." I opened the envelope to find photographs. Old Polaroids showing my grandmother, much younger, standing beside a handsome man I recognized as Marcus Chambers in his 30s. In several images, they were laughing together, standing closer than mere business associates would. "I think they were involved," Avery said softly. "Before she married grandfather. There are letters, too, though I only skimmed them." I studied the photographs, seeing familiar features in my grandmother's young face: the same determined set of her jaw, the same analytical gaze. Vincent hinted there was personal history there. Said grandmother never discussed it, but that it shaped her caution around the Chambers family. "Do you think that's why Marcus targeted our family for so long? Some old rejection?" I considered this, remembering passages from my grandmother's journals about ambition and entitlement, about men who believed ownership was a right rather than a responsibility. "Perhaps partly," I said finally. "But I think it was more about what she represented. A woman who built something valuable, who wielded power competently, who couldn't be controlled." "Like her granddaughter," Avery observed with a small smile. After lunch, I took a detour before returning to the office, driving to the small memorial garden where my grandmother's ashes had been scattered. The space was lush with late summer blooms, butterflies darting between vibrant flowers, a small fountain providing gentle background music. I sat on the stone bench bearing her name, placing a hand on the sun-warmed surface. "I understand now," I said quietly to the peaceful garden. "Why you kept so many secrets. Why you built so many safeguards." The breeze stirred the leaves around me, carrying the sweet scent of gardenias, her favorite flower. I had come here often during the past year, sometimes to seek guidance from her memory, sometimes simply to feel connected to the woman whose foresight had ultimately saved me. "I'm continuing what you started," I told her, "but in my own way, with transparency rather than secrecy, with connection rather than isolation." A butterfly, iridescent blue, its wings catching the sunlight, landed briefly on the bench beside my hand, then fluttered away toward a cluster of bright flowers. I smiled at the timing, allowing myself to imagine it as a sign of approval. By late afternoon, I had returned to my oceanfront home to prepare for the foundation gala. As I dressed, selecting a gown in deep purple with my grandmother's diamonds, I thought about how differently I would enter the same hotel ballroom tonight, not as anyone's accessory or victim, but as the architect of a transformed organization. Vincent arrived precisely at 6, dapper in his tuxedo despite his advancing years. "Ready for your grand entrance?" he asked as I joined him in the waiting car. "Just another work event," I demurred, though we both knew it was more than that. Tonight marked the public relaunch of the foundation under its new mission and leadership. "Your grandmother had a saying," Vincent remarked as we drove toward the city. "When you've been underestimated, use their blindness as your advantage. Then, when you've won, be gracious but unforgettable." I smiled, recognizing her philosophy. "Sounds like her." The hotel came into view, its facade illuminated against the darkening sky. Unlike last year's event, tonight the press had been invited deliberately, part of the foundation's new commitment to transparency. Photographers waited at the entrance, capturing arrivals for the society pages and business press. Vincent offered his arm as we stepped from the car. "Remember who you are," he murmured. "Eleanor's granddaughter," I replied, squeezing his arm gently. "I remember." We paused briefly for photographs, my smile genuine rather than practiced, before entering the transformed ballroom. The space that had once celebrated the chamber's legacy now prominently featured my grandmother's portrait beside displays highlighting the foundation's new initiatives. Throughout the evening, I moved among guests with a confidence that no longer required conscious effort. I discussed research grants with scientists, policy reforms with lawmakers, awareness campaigns with advocates. The Foundation's expanded mission, addressing systemic financial exploitation through education, legal reform, and direct support, resonated with donors and beneficiaries alike. During a quiet moment between conversations, I found myself at the window overlooking the city lights. The same view I had seen a year ago through tears of humiliation was now simply a beautiful urban landscape, no longer charged with painful associations. "Penny, for your thoughts," said a voice beside me. Vanessa had joined me at the window, resplendent in midnight blue. "Just reflecting on how much can change in a year," I replied honestly. "For the better, in this case." She gestured toward the room behind us, where former victims now served on advisory boards, where advocates networked with funders, where survivors shared stories of recovery. "You've transformed something corrupt into something healing." "We all did," I corrected. "Every woman who came forward, every witness who testified, every professional who recognized the pattern and helped stop it." Vanessa smiled. "True enough, but it started with you refusing to follow their victim script." As the evening's formal program began, I took my place at the podium, surveying the assembled guests with quiet satisfaction. The spotlight felt warm on my skin as I welcomed everyone to the Eleanor Winters Foundation's inaugural gala. 1 year ago, many of us gathered in this same room under very different circumstances. I began, my voice steady and clear. What has transpired since then has been both a reckoning and a renewal. The exposure of long-hidden abuses has been painful but necessary. The rebuilding process, challenging but rewarding. I gestured toward the Foundation's new mission statement displayed behind me. My grandmother understood that true power lies not in exploitation, but in elevation. Not in taking advantage of vulnerability, but in creating strength from it. The initiatives we launched tonight, from financial literacy programs to legal advocacy networks, embody that philosophy. As I outlined the Foundation's ambitious plans, I noticed Diana in the front row, nodding approval. Beside her sat Dr. Heller, Vincent, and several board members who had stood with me during the difficult transition. Avery watched from a side table, her expression a mixture of pride and lingering remorse. The past cannot be changed, I concluded, but it can inform how we build the future. The systems that enabled exploitation can be dismantled. The culture that normalized it can be transformed. And those who have survived it can lead that transformation. The applause that followed felt like a collective affirmation, not just of my words, but of the journey we had undertaken together. As I stepped away from the podium, various attendees approached with congratulations and commitments to support the Foundation's work. Near midnight, as the gala wound down, I slipped away to the hotel's rooftop terrace for a moment of solitude. The autumn air carried a hint of coolness now, a refreshing contrast to the warm ballroom. Below, the city spread in all directions, a tapestry of lights and shadows. I thought about Elliot and Marcus, beginning their prison sentences in facilities far from this glittering scene. Their empire dismantled, their reputations destroyed, their freedom curtailed for years to come. Justice had been served in measurable, concrete ways, yet my own healing had come not primarily from their punishment, but from reclaiming my power over my narrative, my resources, my future. From transforming my pain into purpose. From refusing to be defined by what had been done to me. My phone buzzed with a text from Vincent. "Car ready whenever you are. Congratulations on a magnificent event." I texted back that I'd be down shortly, then turned for one last look at the cityscape. Somewhere in that urban expanse was the apartment I had once shared with Elliot, the office where Marcus had demoted me, the storage unit they had emptied of my possessions. Places that had once held such emotional charge now were simply locations on a map, coordinates in a past that no longer defined me. I had built a new life, not in reaction to their betrayal, but in alignment with my own values and vision. As I made my way back to the elevator, I passed a wall of mirrors, catching a glimpse of myself, poised, purposeful, at peace. My grandmother's diamonds caught the light, throwing tiny rainbows against the dark fabric of my gown. She had prepared me for this moment without my knowledge, had laid the groundwork for my resilience long before I needed it, had understood that true strength often emerges only when tested by fire. In the lobby, I paused to thank the foundation staff who had worked tirelessly to make the evening a success. Their genuine enthusiasm for our mission reinforced my commitment to the path ahead, one that would likely hold challenges but also profound opportunities for impact. Outside, the night air wrapped around me like a cool silk scarf. Vincent waited beside the car, his expression one of quiet pride as I approached. "Home?" he asked, opening the door. I thought of my oceanfront sanctuary, of morning coffee on the terrace, of dolphins playing in the distance, of the peace I had found not despite my experience, but because of how I had chosen to move through it. "Yes," I said simply. "Home." As the car pulled away from the glittering hotel, I watched the city recede in the window, giving way to quieter neighborhoods and eventually the coastal highway. The rhythmic sound of tires on pavement created a soothing background to my thoughts. They had chosen their first love, power, control, the intoxication of exploitation over basic human decency. They had been certain I would accept defeat, would live diminished and grateful for whatever scraps they offered. Instead, I had thanked them publicly, genuinely, for setting me free. Free to discover my inheritance, my strength, my purpose. Free to build something better in place of what they had tried to destroy. And now, as the ocean came into view, silver under moonlight, I embraced the peaceful certainty that the life ahead would be entirely my own creation. Not a reaction to betrayal, but a deliberate expression of who I had always been meant to become. Eleanor's granddaughter, my own woman, reborn through fire into someone stronger than before. The car turned onto the cliff road leading to my home, headlights illuminating the path forward into a future entirely of my own design.